Welcome to this video. My name is Karuna, and in this video, I will help you to learn some meditation practices, also followed by discussions with the group. So we'll resume from last week. We've been talking about the Four Noble Truths. Do anybody remember what Four Noble Truths are? Jessica?
The truth of suffering.
The truth of suffering?
The truth of the origin of suffering.
The origin of suffering.
The cessation of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And the path to
And the path leading to the end of suffering. Yeah. So you can say in modern terms like stress, the cause of stress, and then free from stress, and how to be free from stress. So 8 ways to be free from stress. You can put it that way. There is the questions. So let's talk about the first noble truth in detail. So we'll go around. If you feel like you want to read, please do so. If you don't feel like, just pass it around and we just have a discussion before the meditation.
What is the noble truth of suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, dissociation from the loved is suffering, not to get what one wants is suffering. In short, the 5 categories affected by clinging are suffering. There is the noble truth of suffering. Such was the vision, insight, wisdom, knowing, and light that arose in me about things not heard before. This noble truth must be penetrated by fully understanding suffering. Such was the vision, insight, wisdom, knowing, and light that arose in me about things not heard before. This noble truth has been penetrated by fully understanding suffering. Such was... It's a poem, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a poem.
Such was the vision, insight, wisdom, knowing, and light that arose in me about the things not heard before.
The first noble truth with 3 aspects is there is suffering, dukkha. Dukkha should be understood. Dukkha has been understood. This is a very skillful teaching because it is expressed in a simple formula, which is easy to remember, and it also applies to everything that you can possibly experience or do or think concerning the past, the present, or the future. Suffering, or dukkha, is the common bond we all share. Everybody, everywhere suffers. The human beings suffered in the past in ancient India, they suffer in modern Britain, and in the future human beings will also suffer. What do we have in common with Queen Elizabeth? We suffer. With a Trump in Charing Cross, what do we have in common? Suffering. It includes all levels from the most privileged human beings to the most desperate and underprivileged ones, and all ranges in between. Everybody, everywhere suffers. It is a bond we have with each other, something we all understand. When we talk about our human suffering, it brings out our compassionate tendencies. But when we talk about our opinions, about what I think and what you think about politics and religion, then we can get into wars. I remember seeing a film in London about 10 years ago. It tried to portray Russian people as human beings by showing Russian women with babies and Russian men taking their children out for picnics.
At the time, this presentation of the Russian people was unusual because most of the propaganda of the West made them out to be titanic monsters, or cold-hearted reptilian people, and so we never thought of them as human beings.
Bit up, voice up a bit.
If you want to kill people, you have to make them out to be that way. You cannot very well kill somebody if you realise they suffer the way you do. You have to think that they are cold-hearted, immoral, worthless and bad, and that it is better to be rid of them. You have to think that they are not evil. You have to think that they are evil and that it is good to get rid of them. You have to think that they are evil. With this attitude, you might feel justified in bombing and machine gunning them. If you keep in mind our common bond of suffering, that makes you quite incapable of doing those things.
The first noble truth is not a dismal metaphysical statement saying that everything is suffering. Notice that there is a difference between a metaphysical doctrine, in which you are making a statement about the absolute truth, and a noble truth, which is a reflection. A noble truth is a truth to reflect upon. It is not an absolute. It is not the absolute. This is where Western people get very confused, because they interpret this noble truth as a kind of metaphysical truth of Buddhism, but it was never meant to be that.
You can see that the first noble truth is not an absolute statement because of the fourth noble truth, which is the way of non-suffering. You cannot have absolute suffering and then have a way out of it, can you? That doesn't make sense. Yet some people will pick up on the first noble truth and say that the Buddha taught that everything is suffering.
The Pali word dukkha means incapable of satisfying or not able to bear or withstand anything, always changing, incapable of truly fulfilling us or making us happy. The sensual world is like that, a vibration in nature. It would in fact be terrible if we didn't find satisfaction in the sensory world, because then we wouldn't search beyond it. We'd just be bound to it.
However, as we awaken to this dukkha, we begin to find the way out, so that we are no longer constantly trapped in sensory consciousness.
Suffering itself view, shall I continue?
Yeah.
It is important to reflect upon the phrasing of the first noble truth. It is phrased in a very clear way. There is suffering, rather than I suffer. Psychologically, that reflection is a much more skillful way to put it. We tend to interpret our suffering as, I'm really suffering. I suffer a lot and I don't want to suffer. This is the way our thinking mind is conditioned.
Where was it? No, okay. I'm suffering always conveys the sense of I am somebody who is suffering a lot. The suffering is mine. I have a lot of suffering in my life. Then the whole process, the association with one's self and one's memory takes off. You remember what happened when you were a baby and so on. But note, we are not saying there is someone who has suffering. It is not personal suffering anymore when we see it as there is suffering. It is not, oh poor me, why do I have to suffer so much? What did I do to deserve this? Why do I have to get old? Why do I have to have sorrow, pain, grief, and despair? It is not fair. I do not want it. I only want happiness and security. This kind of thinking comes from ignorance, which complicates everything and results in personality problems. To get rid of suffering, we have to admit it into consciousness. But the admission in Buddhist meditation is not from a position of I am suffering, but rather there is the presence of suffering, because we are not trying to identify with the problem, but simply acknowledge that there is one. It is unskillful to think in terms of I am an angry person, I get angry so easily, How do I get rid of it? That triggers off all the underlying assumption of a self, and it is very hard to get any perspective on that. It becomes very confused because the sense of my problems or my thoughts takes us very easily to suppression or to making judgment about it and criticizing ourselves. We tend to grasp and identify rather than to observe, witness, and understand things as they are. When you are just admitting that there is this feeling of confusion, that there is this greed or anger, then there is an honest reflection on the way it is, and you have taken out the underlying assumption, or at least undermined them. So it's a bit going on. So do not grasp these things as personal fault, but keep contemplating these conditions as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self. Keep reflecting, keep seeing them as they are. The tendency is to view life from the sense that these are my problems, and that one being very honest and forward in admitting this. Then our life tends to reaffirm that, because we keep operating from that wrong assumption, but that very viewpoint is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self. So I'll leave it there, and then maybe just spend 5 minutes just to reflect on the paragraphs. What's your take on the first noble truths? That there is suffering or there is stress. What's your take on it?
It's part of life.
It's part of life.
It's present for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We should not seen it as an individual
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon.
Yeah. I think the problem is that we associate with the self, isn't it? That why am I suffering? Why this happens to me? But if we keep it as non-personal, which is impermanent, that changes and will not remain forever, then there is the freedom from it. There is a saying by I forgot the author who said it, but it says suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So pain is basically like not having enough food to eat, then we get hunger. That's inevitable, right? We all beings kind of need food. But the suffering, the thoughts that we have, the self-criticism or judgment or judgment about others, this kind of things is optional, things that we can learn to be skillful, learn to forgive, or learn to let go, learn to not take them personally. These are optional. So here we're talking about understanding or seeing things as they are. Seeing, for example, like the anger, kind of like if I feel angry, I can say, oh, I feel guilty that I'm an angry person, But from a Dharma point of view, we're seeing that anger is an emotion. It's impermanent, right? I don't always feel angry all the time, right? Whenever someone has done injustice, then I feel angry towards. So there is a big difference, isn't it? I'm experiencing anger then to say I'm angry, right? There is a difference, right? So the first statement that there is suffering is just an honest being practical, being straightforward about what it is. Then you have the chance to say, oh, why am I feeling angry about? Then we understand the causes of it. And once we understand the causes of it, then if we can apply the path, which is the right mindfulness, right understanding, investigating, right speech, then there is a chance to end that stress and end that suffering. Make sense? Yeah. So again, it's not a metaphysical way of understanding it, but it's really practically like understanding. For example, like recently, our problem at the moment with the Brexit, like it was going on in the news, and I was like, so thinking about it, watching the news, and I was realizing how stressful I was becoming. Just the whole kind of like the environment that's created, and in one way, I realized that it's, in a way, it's inevitable, but at the same time also, it's suffering. Like my personal suffering is optional, isn't it? Like I chose to like engage in that dialogue, that story. So where is the boundary? You know, how can we acknowledge the problem that we have in the country or in the continent, and at the same time, how can we also not suffer especially in our mind, right? So, any more reflection on the truth?
Where's the boundary between the emotions that you consider as pain and the emotion that you consider as suffering?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, sometimes you're sad because something has happened to you, maybe you lost someone or something, and you want to be sad, you don't want to, I mean, you kind of suffer. Is it considered, do you consider it pain or suffering? Is it
suffering?
Okay.
I consider suffering because I lost my dad last year. Like this is the anniversary actually. Yesterday was the anniversary, and my wife, she was saying, "Oh, how do you feel now that it's a year now since you lost your dad?" And I was like, I feel the pain, but I accepted the suffering. Kind of, I accepted that he's no longer on earth. He's no longer present physically, but then I said he also moved on with his life, and if you believe in Buddhist theory of rebirth, like we all have next life, so we take form in different families, so we like continuity. It's like the water in Thames, River Thames, right? Or the sands, or the water in the River Thames. You know, if you go to the Westminster and you point that this is River Thames, it's not going to be river, right? You're talking about the whole process of the water. So it's like our being is not just like, this is me, like at Imperial, right? I have like so much experiences in the past, right? And after my time at Imperial, maybe somewhere else. So we are a collection of various experiences and events. So in the same way, my dad, he's a being. He had past life, and he came back, and then he will move on. So if I see it that way, then the suffering is less. Yeah. Otherwise, I will be missing him. I will be like, oh, why did he die? Why did he? So I will be suffering, right? But now that I have knowledge, I have the clear understanding that I feel that I'm not suffering so much. I can accept that he's no longer there, and I can let go of that. Make sense?
You say you still feel pain. So what's the pain?
Pain is probably is the feeling that I wish that I spent a bit more time, because I went last year and I just saw him and he died. So I wish that I spent some time with him.
That's suffering, right?
But that's the suffering, yeah. But that's the suffering bit. The pain will be like the physical not being around. Maybe that's the pain. But the boundary, you're talking about the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
The boundary between the pain
and suffering.
and the suffering. The pain is it's something that we feel physically. Yeah. Suffering is something that we kind of like worry, or we feel fearful, anxious. So that's the suffering bit, more mental.
Is it like the pain you can't control and the suffering you can't control?
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you say, for example, you miss your father for many reasons,
Mm.
I mean, you can't like you've been brought up in a certain way, so that will affect you. The loss, like his loss, does affect you. But then, whether you choose to let that affect you,
Mm-hmm.
so that the pain is something you can't control, or the suffering is something that you can.
Exactly. Well put. Yeah.
I was also wondering whether the suffering is the thing that connects us with other people or other beings. I don't know, I felt just as kind of something that connects us all
Mm-hmm.
rather than separate us.
Yeah, and that's the statement that the Ajahn Sumedho was talking about, that if we see that there is suffering, it actually includes everyone, no matter where we are, who we are, what level we are. It connects everyone, we are in the same boat as much as anyone else. And we have this notion that we have these categories almost like, and we separate, we have these boundaries, and but actually we all same, we breathe the same air. So the Buddha's position was to think ourselves in that way, rather than to say, oh, you are this, or I am that, and that creates the suffering bit. We'll go more detail into the next one, the cause of suffering, but just this general sense of acceptance that there is this, because I think also there is this statement about like how we want happiness and we don't want suffering, right? There is that tendency, like, do you see the duality of it? I don't want pain, but pain is inevitable, right? Pain is obvious. So the Buddha is saying that no matter how much you try to ignore suffering, it's going to be there. We all going to face some kind of illness or eventually, obviously, death. That's part of everybody in the history, in the future. So there is the genuine, natural acceptance of it. Because once we have the acceptance, then we don't fight with it. There's no suffering in it. Make sense? Yeah. Any more reflection on it? Yeah.
You say we have to accept, but it's really hard to accept. So how do you? Just forget about ego or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. How do we accept? Well, there are many ways. Sometimes we need to experience, like for example, I needed to experience my dad's a loss. So that was my practical experience of accepting loss, like death. So that was really hard in the beginning, because if you see someone every day or every week, and for the last many years, and suddenly the person is not there, then it's really difficult. So I had to go through the process. I would say the process of it, and with obviously the meditation, with insight into like the Dharma, and discussions and then comes the acceptance. Acceptance doesn't come on its own. Sometimes if you feel pain, you have to allow yourself to pain, and most people don't allow pain to come. It's like, I don't want to feel, or I don't know how to feel, because we're too scared of that pain.
Scared of feeling the emotion.
Yeah, scared of feeling the emotions. And because we are not taught about these emotions, we were taught like, oh, don't feel pain, don't cry. It's like, why are you feeling it? You should be happy. Like these kind of like statements we have, right? You should be happy. And then there is this general sense of avoidance of suffering, avoidance of, like, we don't even want to talk about death, like, shh, don't talk. Like, so there is this complete denial about the fact. But if we can just allow it, saying, it's all right, it's normal, it's...
But feeling the emotion is pain, not suffering, right?
Yeah, feeling the emotions is pain, but how you are affected is the optional. Yeah, you can either have suffering, which is the attachment to it, or you can have understanding and acceptance through insight, which is seeing things as they are. Yeah. And there is another analogy by the Buddha, was that imagine if you were shot by an arrow, right? No, there was another. The example is there are two arrows. One arrow is that you get shot, right? Which you can do something like, you can seek help from doctor, right? You can just take it out if you get shot. But the other arrow is the one that we tell ourselves, is the one that we criticize ourselves, or the one we feel guilty about or shame about. And it's the second arrow that we can do something about it. The second arrow is the more painful one, because it's the one that we keep it ourselves, and we deny that. Yeah. So it's about being aware and then taking it out, and not suffering the second arrow. Yeah. So once we acknowledge that, we can also work on the physical pain as well. Yeah. Through meditation, actually, it's proven to also affect the physical pain. Through meditation, the research that was done by John Kabat-Zinn, right? 8 weeks of mindfulness training. You know that? Actually, this guy in America, he's done this trials with patients with chronic illness. These people have been kind of like sent home, saying that there's no hope, there's no way out of it, there's nothing we can do. So he said, okay, you send them to my clinic, we'll do mindfulness meditation. And they did 8 weeks, and after 8 weeks, the people had experience of kind of like managing pain. Like they didn't feel as painful as they were. They could manage, they could live with the pain. So it also has the psychology, our mind also has impact on the body as well. How we train our therefore the mind and the body, they are not separate. We are not saying that one is better than the other. We are physical and also the psychological being. We are aware, we can hear, we can sense. Yeah. So they affect each other. Yeah. So let's end there, and then we continue the meditation. Is that enough for food for thought, for the suffering bit? Okay, so when you feel ready, please sit comfortably, or you can lie down if you want, if you feel really tired. And get blankets if you feel cold. Or if the light is too strong, maybe have some blankets or something like that. Make sure you're comfortable. Alex, do you want to come here? So she can stretch her legs. Yeah. If you want to stretch your legs, you can stretch. So once again, don't put pressure on yourself to have a great meditation, no thoughts, complete zen and blissed out. That's not going to happen. That's not the intention. You want to just be natural. You just want to let your mind kind of do what it wants. Don't control the mind. There is no good meditation, bad meditation. So every moment is a meditation. Every moment is the practice of awareness. So when you feel ready, gently bring your awareness to the sound of the gong, sound of the children outside, and come back to the sensation of the touch of the body on the cushion gently. Weight of the body on the floor. Sensations of the breath. Notice the moment you inhale all the way into the abdomen, rising and falling. Notice how I feel. What happens when I mindfully breathe and I can let go of my obsessive thinking, the suffering part is the obsession with certain things. Unable to relax, unable to trust, or mind wandering, autopilot. Gently come back to the now, here and now. In the present moment, we can be free of the worry of the past, and the anxiety of the future. And also just get a general acceptance that life is stressful, it's difficult. We all have work, we have exams, research, projects, family, and especially what's happening in the politics. So just get a sense of that acceptance of the dukkha. And notice when you can pause and breathe and not react to the weather. Events are like the weather. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's cloudy, and sometimes it's bright, open, blue. So in our mind, in the environment, keep an open mind. So please come back to the experience of the breath. Notice the moment you breathe from the tip of the nostril all the way to the abdomen, and from all the way up, from the abdomen to all the way up to the tip of the nostril again. Just take a moment, see how long the breath, and repeat that process. use the sound of the gong to remember, to remind, come back. And if the mind wanders away, don't worry. It's not a mistake. It's not a bad meditation. It's just take a moment. What took you away? Notice what's happening. And hearing the sound of the roof upstairs. Hearing the sound of the children outside playing. Sound of the gong. If you feel sleepy, open your eyes. Keep your eyes open. If you feel you need to stretch your legs or body, you can just loosen up a bit. Don't try too hard. So you may be thinking all sort of things, and that's okay, that's alright, because that's what the mind do. Be aware. While thinking, be aware that you're thinking. It's not a mistake to think. It's okay. Just know that you're thinking, because often we're not even aware that we're thinking. That's the problem. Daydreaming, mind wandering, not present with the reality. If you're feeling sleepy, be aware that you're feeling sleepy. If you're feeling tired, just notice that you're feeling tired. If you're feeling calm, also acknowledge that you're feeling calm. If you're hearing, simply hearing. We don't really hear it. We think we are hearing it. So the practice of mindfulness is to really hear it as if for the first time we're hearing it. When we're breathing, we feel as if we're breathing as if for the first time, completely, without thinking about the breath. We're breathing completely. So that's mindfulness. Often what happens is that we're breathing, but we may be thinking about all sort of things. So the autopilot, we call it, the autopilot kicks in. When we come to office, we come to school, we're not even aware that we are walking or we are coming. We are walking or working, emailing. So please train your mind to do one thing with full awareness. When you're thinking, just thinking. When you're feeling, just feeling. Feeling sleepy or feeling relaxed or feeling neutral. When you're hearing, simply hearing. Notice the duration, notice the intensity. Notice the fading away. Notice the silence. If you have many thoughts, I would recommend you open your eyes, or if you feel sleepy, I would like you to open your eyes and stay grounded, stay present with your sensory experiences, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're sensing, what you're thinking. Within this room. So keep your senses wide awake. Wide awake. There is a saying that doing is easy, it's the thinking that's difficult. Keep your senses wide awake, so it may be what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, sensing, thinking. Less of the thinking in the meditation. We're very good with thinking outside, so at work or when we're planning. For now, just keep your senses wide awake. So train your senses to be more attentive, more focused, more in touch, more connect with the reality of the present. If you're feeling pain in your legs or back, notice that the pain is happening. And if you feel like you need to stretch, you can mindfully stretch. Or change your posture if you need to. Give yourself permission also to think if it is needing to think. If you need to loosen up. Give yourself permission. And really experiment this pain and suffering concept, the theory of First Noble Truth. That the body aches, the mind suffers because we want to be somewhere else right now. We want to go back to our project or work, or we wish something should happen differently. So we're constantly in pain, constantly in suffering. But if we choose right now, we can be free. And the present moment is free of that. We can take a long, deep, attentive breath. we can open up our mind, wake up to our senses. If you're in pain somewhere, you can choose to stretch. And also give up the idea of having a perfect meditation. There's no perfect meditation. There's no bad meditation. Only meditation. So if you're thinking, it's also a meditation. If you're seated like this with pain, it's also a meditation. If you're having all this dialogue in your head, it's also a meditation. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes, and then you'll hear the gong towards the end. So I would encourage you to also wake up to the senses and use every moment as a way to be more grounded, more accepting and compassionate. So please gently stretch your hands, stretch your legs, opening your eyes, bringing this meditation to a closure. Okay. If you're in a rush, we can take a leave. If not, we'll spend 5 more minutes just to maybe, if you have any kind of sharing or feedback or any kind of questions. How is everybody doing?
My mind hasn't been that quiet in a long time.
Okay. And why is that? What did you do? What happened?
Lots of things, cravings were arising. I was feeling very hungry.
Okay.
I acknowledged them, and then they kind of faded.
Mm. Yeah. Especially like when you sit for meditation, like all kinds of things happen. Because normally we get distracted easily. Like we're distracted at work, with project, with people, with assignments and things like that. We constantly distracted, right? But the moment we sit down for meditation, it's like we're craving for that verbal dimension, especially. And meditation becomes really difficult at that point. Most people would just give up if it is not a group meditation. Even for 3 minutes, it's really difficult to meditate. But know that it's very natural. It's part of the practice of meditation that we'll have thought about. What we're going to do, what we're going to eat, what we're going to say, what we're going to email, and so on. And once you learn this art of observing and doing what the mind is kind of thinking and giving space and kind of like reclaiming ourselves other than being hijacked. We call it the monkey mind. The monkey mind gets hijacked a lot with bananas. So it wants to raid the bananas, and even if it had lots of bananas, it wants to eat now. So the monkey mind, we had to learn to manage the monkey mind. It's called the monkey mind, managing the monkey mind. Yeah. Any kind of questions on the Four Noble Truths? Happy? Yeah.
I have a historical question.
Mm-hmm.
When the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths,
Yeah.
did he start by stating the four, or just started with the first one, explaining what it was?
They were always four.
Yeah, but when he was explaining it,
Mm.
did he start by saying they are Four Noble Truths and they are this, and this? Or did he say the first Noble Truth is this, and explaining the first before stating the second? Do you see what I mean?
In the sutra, I think he states the four at once.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's the original teaching, it's just the written part I read.
I didn't understand the questions. Did anybody understand his questions?
I think he meant that you think there are four truths. So when the Buddha first articulated his four truths, so did he first come to the understanding of the first truth and then led to the second one, led to the third, which led to the fourth one? Or did he have a holistic understanding from the start, like he knew all four?
I would say holistic understanding. That obviously these teachings were written down later, so they put in a numerical order, and it's a very structured way. It's like paper that you write down. But in lecture room, you don't necessarily kind of like when you're coming out, when you're having this realization, when you have this aha moment sitting down, you don't necessarily kind of like have this four. But it came kind of like simultaneously, one after another. Once he realized that there is this. The aspect of kind of like the dukkha, the stress, unsatisfactoriness, then he was naturally asking like, so what is the cause of this? And then he said, okay, if there is a cause of it, then there must be also an end to it, because once you take out the roots, then there is an end, right? And then how to do it. So I think when he was, obviously we know the sutra that he went to Varanasi where his 5 friends were staying, and then he said, "Hey guys, I got something completely new for you. It's something that you never heard of before," and he said it's called the truth of suffering, and this is the cause of suffering, that we all kind of like are born, and we eventually we live life to a certain extent, to a certain years, and we eventually pass away and we take rebirth, because there is this karmic retributions that we create, these effects that we create, and that goes in a cycle, right? And this cycle can be broken at any point. If it is a cycle, then at any moment you take out one, the cycle falls, right? The cycle doesn't remain. So I think he was talking like that, like very human to human, like we are talking about right now. He was not necessarily interested in kind of like the metaphysics of it. So later on, obviously, people sat down and composed this. But I would say it was quite a spontaneous dialogue that he had. Does that give you some indications? Yeah. Any kind of feedback on him, on his question?
So is it true that they say, according to Buddha, one of the causes, the main causes of suffering is desires?
Yeah.
Having desires, expectations.
Actually, the word desire doesn't portray the whole thing in English. The word in Sanskrit is called he's called tanha. Sometimes it's called tanha. Tanha is kind of like a craving thing. It's like I want more of it. Like I need more. I need more. So it's like once you have this craving, then it's like, I don't know, some of you may know, if you smoke, for example, like the feeling of smoke, right? Like how we crave for it. So it's like that. Sometimes the cause of suffering can be the grasping onto it, like holding onto it. That we want the same thing, or more of it. So often that can be the cause of suffering as well. So it's quite subtle. It's not like that, but it's more about if you look from a causality point of view, right? The causality point of view. So if causality point of view, like if there is expectations. So for example, like if I give you a present, like a phone or something like, and then I expect you to behave nicely with me, and you don't behave, right? So there is that expectation as like a tanha, like some kind of like a string. So that is the problem. But if I give you with a very like unconditionally, then that's done, right? So the activity is not the problem; it's the subtle grasping onto it. So in our thinking also we have those strings a lot. So that's the kind of like the suffering aspect of it.
And when you were reading, the part that you were reading said suffering is not everything. What did that mean exactly? I can't remember when it was the part that you read, but I forgot. Which part?
Not sure which part of it. Something is everything.
It was about absolute. Something that said suffering is not everything.
Oh, it's not the absolute. He's not talking about the absolute, like this is right, this is wrong. But he's just saying that this is what it is, in a kind of like a general sense. By the way, just to go back to your point as well, sometimes it's also called the ignorance is the cause of suffering as well, like not knowing. Like I don't know. If I had knowledge, if I had wisdom, then I would give you unconditionally. So that's probably the truth, right? But when I give you with expectation, that is lack of wisdom or with ignorance. So it could be the ignorance as well that's causing the pain or the suffering. Yeah, and there are many sections of the craving, the grasping as well. The expectations, wanting more or not understanding why we're doing it, lack of clarity, or like wrong way of understanding. Sometimes it doesn't mean that we read about it, but sometimes it's very difficult. Like sometimes like a fool doesn't realize that he is a fool or she is a fool, right? It's also often like that. Like I don't understand that I don't know everything, I don't know many of the things. But if I have ignorance, then I would think, oh, I'm right, and what I'm doing is right. So that's the hidden kind of ignorance in there. It's the obstructions.
Yeah, so kind of what we were saying earlier about suffering versus pain, and the fact that if you accept, sometimes you can just avoid suffering if you accept it. So acceptance is just the opposite of that kind of craving that you are saying.
Yeah.
Acceptance, not having expectation.
Yeah.
Not desire.
Exactly. Yeah. Not passive acceptance, but the accepting that this is how it is. This is who I am. This is who you are. This is who they are. Not trying to change that or reinforcing it my way. The problem is the my way. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.